Hello everyone, I hope everybody is doing well and also finding my videos helpful so far. So without further ado, let's just jump right into our crash course series. In this video, I'll be covering the chapter of media in detail. Okay, so let's just begin with the basic definition of media, and first we need to understand the definition so that we can move on to other concepts, right? So generally you should understand that there are various forms of media. For example, we have the television, radio, newspapers, books, films, magazines, internet, including social media. And like I said before, delving deeper into other concepts, let's just begin with the basics. So what is media? So media literally comes from the word medium, which means that media can include any and all sorts of medium on or through which information is passed down to the consumers. We cannot limit the definition of media to only mainstream forms of mediums. For example, we have television, radio, books, social media. However, media can also refer to other not so mainstream forms of information generation, right? So we have drawings, we have paintings, we have poetry, right? That also counts as different forms of media. There are different types of media forms, which include, like I said, newspapers, films, magazines, radio, music, and even advertisements. So first we understood what's the definition of media. Media is basically a medium through which information is passed down to the users or to the consumers, right? Okay, so now we move on to the difference between old and new forms of media. Old media includes radio, newspaper, television, and these forms of media allowed for mass communication, which means that information can be transferred to a large audience, right? However, new media includes the internet and social media apps, and you all are familiar with these apps such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. And these apps allow you to have interpersonal communication, which means that you can now have one-to-one communication between the producer and the consumer, right? So, and another defining feature of new media is that it has now blurred the boundaries between the producer and the consumer, right? For example, now a person can be both a producer and also a consumer. For example, you can take my example. For example, I am a content creator on YouTube, right? I am a producer, but at the same time, I also consume other content on YouTube, which makes me a consumer. So I'm both a producer and a consumer at the same time. Okay, so now moving on to the role of advertisements and the relationship with media. With media, we cannot forget the role of advertisements. Different forms of media are used for advertisements, right? So for example, on YouTube, on different billboards, on different websites, on television, or on radio, you hear and you also see different advertisements that are played, right? And you see that it is through the use of media that you persuade and convince the audience to buy a specific product. Through advertisements, giant media corporations earn money. But how? For example, if you're watching TV or your favorite show on YouTube, you see that in between different ads pop up. And what you need to understand is that these ads do not just pop up on their own, right? There's a whole business that goes behind it. You see that there are different advertisement companies who want their ads to run on different media platforms. They pay these giant media corporations huge sums of money in order to run their ads and attract a large audience. So first we see that advertisements can be used to convince the audience to buy a certain product. Then we see that another important role of advertisements is that they can be used as a form of propaganda. So you see that advertisements can be curated or they can be presented in such a way that they can basically lure you to buy a certain product, and they can also attract a targeted specific type of an audience. For example, an ad that is designed for women handbags, it can basically be designed and curated in such a way that it only attracts young ladies, right? Another example could be that, for example, mostly in car ads, you'll see that women are shown in a very sexualized manner. And how are they shown like that? So most of the time, women, when they're objectified, when they're shown in a very sexualized manner, for example, they wear tight clothes or short clothes, their bodies are objectified. And why is this done so? It is done so that more and more men are attracted to buy their car, right? To see that ad and then they're lured to buy that car, right? So how ads can be made or curated in such a way that the audience is attracted On one hand, you attract the audience to buy a specific product, but on the other hand, for example, like I gave you the example of the car ad. In this example, you see that on one hand, the audience is attracted, especially the targeting the males. So they present a sexualized, objectified woman. So on one hand, males are attracted to buy the car. On the other hand, what ads do is that they're basically reinforcing the stereotypical gender attitudes, right, or dispositions, right, that a woman needs to be presented in such a way. This is what an attractive woman is. So on one hand, ads are convincing you to buy the product, but on the other hand, they're also reinforcing stereotypical gender attitudes. Okay, apart from seeing what are advertisements and how advertisements can be used to attract and convince the audience to buy a specific product, what is basically the role of advertisements is basically to convince the audience, right? We see that advertisements have also been criticized for a number of reasons, right? And I'll be going through each one of them, but very briefly. So advertisements, why they're criticized? So one of the reasons is that they're criticized because they encourage a behavior where you are never satisfied. You always want more and more. So advertisements, what's the philosophy that they run on? The philosophy of advertisements is that you need to attract the audience, and how will you attract the audience is by making them feel that there's something missing in their life. They want it, they just need it. And what kind of a behavior does this reinforce is that you are never satiated with the things that you have, and you always want more and more, and this gets triggered more and more by seeing advertisements, right? And so it simply encourages more materialism and also consumerism. You want more material, you want more things, and at the same time, when you want more material, then you're also consuming more, right? Advertisements have also been criticized for portraying a binary between the West and the West, right? So the Western lifestyle, so the Western people or the Western lifestyle, it's basically presented as the people living in the West are basically presented as being more enlightened, more educated, more civilized, right? However, you see people from other non-Western regions, they're basically presented as uncivilized, uneducated, right? Who need more advancement or who are basically underdeveloped, right? So this a binary that is being formed between the West and the West, it is misguiding, because you see that other regions are not actually what's being shown in ads, right? Another criticism advertisements is that a lot of advertisements show men and women in stereotypical roles. For example, women are mostly shown in the private sphere. They're basically shown as the homemakers, and men are basically shown as the breadwinners working in the public sphere, right? And this basically solidifies your gender binaries, and it places men and women into two different boxes where men and women cannot move from one box to another, right? Then we also see that apart from reinforcing the gender binaries and pushing men and women into into only one of these affairs, right, and also making it seem this is the normal, it pressurizes women to look in a particular way, right? You need to fit a particular ideal beauty standard, right? And the ideal beauty standard is something, for example, the mainstream ideal beauty standard through ads that is constructed for women is that they need to be fair, that they need to be slim, smart, they need to have a sexualized body so that men are attracted to them, right? And why is this ideal beauty standard criticized? It's because women now feel like fitting into a beauty standard that is unachievable, right? Lastly, we see that advertisements have also been criticized for they've produced basically a child market where they have been criticized by parents who say that advertisements encourage children to buy more and more material, more toys, more clothes, right? And that's basically putting more pressure on parents to get the children more goods, more accessories, more items, right? So advertisements have also been criticized for convincing children to if they'll have this good and then another item and then another product or another good, then this is only that will make them happy, right? So again, tying it back to the idea of materialism and consumerism, we see that what advertisements have done is that the downside of advertisements is that you are never satisfied and you always want to consume more and to have more, right?